first story and have a pleasant day. War cement.
First time you did anything on Subway?
Well, I went down there on a Friday night. All my friends have been to the yards before me, the people I hung out with. And I've decided I got enough cans up to go down the yards, and I went down there the first night, and we went, at that time everything was cool, there was no cops or anything, but still, you know, every little noise bothered me. And there were a lot of noises that don't mean anything, it's just the ancients and this and that. And so we went down there, and I did one piece. And I just, you know, did my thing and left. The second time was a little easier. The third time it was like nothing.
Okay, how did it feel when you saw that first piece riding around on a train?
Well, I guess you could look at it as accomplishment. It was like the first step into really getting into subway graffiti. And after that piece, I wanted to get into it more and deeper.
Did it have anything to do with like getting away with doing it?
In a way, yeah. But I didn't feel like I did enough to get away with, to be happy about. So that's what persuaded me to go down there a second time, then a third time.
I'm one member of 10 members of the squad. We cover the entire as far as graffiti. Every day we work a different borough. And we just cover graffiti, going into the yards, riding on the trains. And whenever we get a kid graffiti, we arrest them. They're over 16 years old. They're going to be fingerprinted, and their picture is going to be taken, and they're going to have a permanent record. And if they're under 16 years old, we treat them as juvenile delinquents. We take them to the family court, and they will be prosecuted as juvenile delinquents.
I got started like everybody else. I was hanging around my neighborhood amongst friends, and everybody, you know, likes to scribble on their notebooks and everything. It just so happened that I did it good enough that it really excited me, because not the trains at first, but just to see a name around the neighborhood, so people could identify you. And then after you know, I got it everywhere I could. I resorted to the trains to, you know, have it citywide.
Do you know a lot of other graffiti artists?
Yeah, I know like most of the ones that get on the train, most of the well-known ones. The others, like the toys, as you'd say, are hard to keep track of.
Now, what's a toy?
A toy is a person who starts out writing graffiti, doesn't do it that good. The name is given to him because he starts out with these little magic marks that you get at any stationery, and the older writers use industrial magic markers that you can get in certain places, and that the toys don't know about. So it's like a toy is a plaything to the older writers.
What happened was Saturday at 1 o'clock in the Willits Point Yard. We had an appointment with youths that we were going to meet. From Tuesday, our sergeant was in the yards taking pictures of the graffiti. We show this as evidence when we go to court. So Tuesday, when we were in the yard, when the sergeant was in the yards, so we observed the two youths outside the fence. And the two youths asked the sergeant, what was he doing there? So he says, well, he was from the press, and they're writing a story about graffiti. Now, the kids got interested, and they wanted recognition. So they told him that 1 o'clock Saturday, they were going to meet, and they were going to show them all how they come into the fence, how they do the graffiti and everything else. And what happened was the sergeant brought me and my partner. Now we had 4, and we arrested them, so they were kind of annoyed. They were set up. they thought they were anyway. So we arrested them.
Well, before I used to ride Blue Blazer 148, but then when I got busted, the thing to do at the time was use your backup name, which was a secondary name on the side that you'd get up not as much as your primary name, but close to it, so that in the event that you do get busted, you could always turn to your second name. But I didn't have a second name, so I had to think one up. And I spent like a week trying to figure out which letters I could do the best, because if I was going to pick a name out, I was going to pick one out that I had good style for, so I could, really put it up on the trains nice. Well,
Okay, how do you get the paint?
most people go rack it up. Racking up means that you go in the store and you rob it. There's different ways of doing it. First, one way of doing it is walk in with one of them long green coats, and they have long pockets. You could get away with as many as 15 cans a shot that way. Or you could use a bag trick. The bag trick is you go in the store with an empty bag and come full. You could get away with as much as 30 cans that way.
Out in Fort Burrows, we're running two-man, actually a borough. That's not too much. We're trying to get more men into the squad. This is all going to depend on how much money's going to be funded for it.
Sure.
But 10 men, nothing. If we work days, a lot of this stuff is happening at night. There may not be anybody working tonight trying to.
We're really after the big painters. We don't really, we let a lot of the small stuff. We gather information, and then we really come down to the yards and get the big-time painters. It's a very difficult, hard thing. You have to get close to some of these kids. Some of them you like personally. They are really, they're going to go places someday. Really, if I was going to have a son, really, some of them you really, they get to you, and they're really nice human beings. It's just, this is their, if you were standing still, they paint you.
Well, I call myself a king of graffiti because last year there was heavy competition, and it took place on the Flushing line because I knew they heard like when I was starting to do good with the piecing and everything. Word leaked out to the Bronx, where everything all started and everything was happening, that there was somebody that had to be topped on the Flushing line. I got out of bubble letters and I went into like sort of plain letters, but not, it was a comparison between script writing and plain letters. And I stuck to that style just to get around the Flushing line, since there was no competition there after he left, until October of last year, when Tracy, Chi-Chi, and King, the three best out of the Bronx, came down to the sevens. They came down to the sevens because the sevens are the best line to take pictures of. It's the cleanest line that you could put your work on and take pictures on, because it's an elevated train, and the Bronx lines are all underground, and they have some elevated trains, but they get dirty fast because they go underground. And since the sevens are uniform, so they came down and started doing all these different designs and stuff, and I got word of it Saturday, since they went down Friday, and everybody knew about it Saturday, because at that time the yards were they weren't hot, and it was like a social gathering down there. So a lot of my friends went out to look for me and said that they are down there doing all this fancy stuff and colorful stuff that practically topped all of the earlier stuff that I had, since I wasn't doing anything fancy, since there was no reason for it. So that got me worried. So Saturday I was thinking of a new top to bottom to top theirs. But then the idea hit my head on Saturday night to do not only a top to bottom, but extend it a little to cover up the whole side of the car and do a full car. It topped all of their pieces. And after And since Tracy and Chi-Chi and King were down there when we were doing this, and they saw it after it was finished, it accounted for their Christmas piece, which they did following this, which came out good, but wasn't good enough to top this. So after that, the full car rush started on the 7s. Everybody doing these huge things because nobody ever thought of doing something this big because everybody was used to top to bottoms. And top to bottoms, like, they take up at the most 1/4 of the train, windows and all, be it in the center or on one of the sides. It was top to bottom. But the full car was really good because it stands out among all the other cars. You can have a whole line of 12 top to bottoms on one train and one full car. The full car will overpower the rest of them. So everybody gave it a try. And Tracy, Chi-Chi, and King came down the next weekend and they did a 3 full car express, which just had their names. And after that, they just left and they went back to the Bronx, tops. And after that, I just everything else I did after that was all full cars. And with the paint I had left, I just did window highs. And Tracy, King, and Chi-Chi are still working on top of the first one. And I've done 7.
Who's the most biggest operator now?
Well, right now we have In. I-N. Yeah, he has something like about 10,000 pieces out on the road right now. And it seems like all the other kids know him and they respect him because he has so much art out. And now, in this Willard's Point right here where I was speaking, there's a writer by the name of Caine. And he is supposed to be the one that does the best art.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they all respect him.
Have you seen any of Caine's work?
Yes, you'll see some of his work in the arts here. He really does tremendous work.
Tremendous work.
Yeah, he does what they call masterpieces.
What's a masterpiece?
Pieces when they paint a whole train of a picture of a scene, of persons, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, that would be a masterpiece. And the kids respect him for this.
When a young man ain't got nothing but young man. All the people, they step back when a young
Some of these kids, if they did put their talent to work, are real good artists because sometimes when we arrest them and we bring them into court and they show some of their artwork, the judge is, astonished at.
But you know nowadays, it's the old man who's got all the money.
and a young man.
It's part of me. It's like my lifestyle. I was born with. Who remembers? And I just keep on drawing. I guess I will be drawing until I die. what time is the best time to go down to do it. Based on that, you go down to the yards, you know what you're going to do. You can't mess around down there too long anymore. And then you touch it up at the end. Since there were a lot of artists, graffiti artists doing it, there were a lot of good clicks doing it. So they spent most of their time like together, either watching the trains or racking up. Everybody would have a partner, and they'd go out and ride on the trains. And since the group started, they had at first they had meetings and everything, but that kind of died off, as well as the groups themselves. But there were only a few groups left in New York City that are still operating, and they're groups run by themselves, among themselves, competing with themselves. And since they spend most of their time down the yards and everything, it put them in a different category than just rather than hanging out, and with a regular hangout, on the street corners.
What does your graffiti say to the world as it goes down the train?
My graffiti? It says that there is good art running on the trains, and there is somebody who's trying to make the trains look better, and somebody's making an effort to change the appearance of subways and other things to dress up the city rather than looking at draggy subways and walls.
Why do you think they choose subway cars as opposed to the platform so much and other things like that?
Because it can be seen by everybody. That's the purpose of graffiti, is to be seen. You'll never get it in a tunnel or anything. It has to be where it goes throughout the city and is seen. It's like you'll see them stand at the station sometimes like a pyromaniac, and they'll watch their work. Really, it's interesting. I mean, graffiti's no good if it can't be seen. It has to be seen. The more people that see it, the better it is.
What do you think is in it for the graffiti artist? What?
I think that he gets a self-satisfaction out of seeing his name riding around on the subway cars. He gets some kind of a satisfaction out of it, right?
Have you caught many of them?
Oh, yes. We catch them every day of the week. What they do is, when we arrest them, the sentences from the court that they will scrub walls. And they go to a subway station on a Saturday afternoon, and depending on how much work or how big the work it was that he did, he may have to do maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It all depends on.
What would Caine get?
Caine, I think, he would have to do it for about a year. He has. In fact, they know who he is. You know, we know who he is and his name and everything else. Just a matter of catching him while he's doing it.